Senor Eric Williams.
Yes, sir.
I forgot to tell you, it's a Spanish-speaking podcast.
No problem. Give me 10 minutes to brush up on my Espanol.
I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6. That's it for me, and I'm out.
I'm done. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you could join me and Øystein in our beautiful Infinite podcast.
I'm so happy that you guys are doing this. Podcasts takes us back to the days of our great-grandparents when you'd sit around and listen to the radio and do things. So I love being part of the podcast world. This is fun.
Yeah. Or even further back, the campfire.
Yeah, sitting around
style.
Telling stories. Ooh, I love it. Yeah.
So we've become friends through a third party, the great Christian. Christian the Great.
Christian Mo. He is, he's one of the funniest people I've ever met.
One of the greatest, yes. He will be a guest here when he's ready. You're always welcome, Christian. But I do recall that we've met many years ago on a pilot for a TV show where the husband of the in the relationship was to go to sort of like a boot camp or something.
What were you? I'm so embarrassed that I didn't remember you from that.
I was sitting in this small editing room with no windows, and we met.
You were a part of that. I'm sorry, I don't remember that. But there are, the TV world is such a hive of activity that I often run into that where I'll talk to people and then I don't realize that we talked at a party or a meeting sometime before. But no, that was an interesting show. Short-lived, but interesting.
And other than that, I've come to, so my friend Christian was talking about his friend Eric. And I was like, Eric, the Eric who made the TV show Alt for Norge. And I was like, I met this guy once. And who is this guy? And Christian was telling me all these stories about how Eric would be like, I would just go dumpster hunting for some stuff that I need. And I would find it, and he would carve things out of wood, and it was so great. I was like, oh, this guy, he seems like the greatest guy, and you are.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Who are you? What is this? Where is this coming from?
Well, I'm a writer and a woodworker, and the woodworking came about by accident. The woodworking happened when I first moved to our new apartment, and I was walking outside, and I looked into a dumpster, and I saw this beautiful slab of maple. And I thought, that's a nice piece of wood. Why is somebody throwing that away? I said, if I had a saw, I would take that and put it into my window frame. And I lifted it up, and underneath was a box that said Black & Decker Stig Saw. And I thought, oh, come on. Come on now. And it was taped shut. It had never been used. And I thought, oh, okay, then I guess my mission is pretty clear. So I dragged them both out of the dumpster and fitted that into the window and thought, I wonder what else is out there. And I found that people in Oslo, because we're all very wealthy compared to the people in the rest of the world, we've got enough to throw away. And we throw away beautiful furniture, amazing,
Oh, yeah.
So over the years, I've furnished a lot of our apartment with raw wood or found items from probably within a couple 100 meters of my house. So every season when people start throwing stuff out of their boat, that's just shopping. That's my IKEA.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's a hobby. The woodworking is a hobby, and every year we have a Christmas market in our apartment that you guys are very welcome to come to, and it's all things for sale that are made from found items, children's toys and salad bowls from chunks of wood. So it's great fun, but it also has become a small supplemental income.
Yeah.
Just to take what others find as junk and absorb it.
That is so cool.
But the writing I've done since I was a boy, I knew as a 6-year-old. I remember my sister used to read me stories, and I remember thinking, oh, stories are a thing people write, then that's what I want to do. I want to make stories. And I knew even then exactly what life would be, which is making up stories. And It's yeah. Whenever I'm sitting in a cafe writing, I always look at the other people around and think, why isn't everybody else doing this?
Yeah.
What are they up to? They should be writing. This is great.
Telling stories. Yeah.
So that's I'm an American and moved to Norway. Love refugee, they call us.
It's very
Found a Norwegian and
very typical. That's the way people tend to end up in Norway.
It's not a new story.
Yeah. It's love is never grows old, right?
No,
It's
it was enough to, and of course I love to fish, and Norway has great fishing and outdoors. So I came here and thought this is a good place to be.
yeah, and we're so glad you did.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been on behalf of the Norwegian population. It's been an enrichment and a blessing.
And then I met my wife through our boy Tom, and Tom has I shouldn't say he has autism. He is autistic. He's
Yes.
profoundly
Yes.
autistic. He doesn't speak. And I saw him in Bislett Bada, and I was sitting in the hot tub because I couldn't read the Norwegian sign that said no one allowed in the hot tub from 12 to 1. And then Tom suddenly ran over. This little 6-year-old boy jumped in and started doing circles in the hot tub and running his fingers along the tiles.
Yeah.
And then since I was there among the tiles, he would run his finger along my shoulders and head in the same way. And I've often worked with special needs individuals, so I thought, this boy, he's autistic. I need to find his parents and see if I can work with Tom as a støttekontakt.
Yeah.
And then I began working with Tom, and then fell in love with his mom, Christina, and his sister, Tara, and suddenly I had this wonderful family.
Wow.
So as my mom called it, my ready-made family. So that's how I ended up here in this place now, and it's Oslo. It's a great place to live.
It is. Now I moved to Drammen, so but it's also great.
You'll move back very soon.
Yeah. So, what is it that you like about storytelling so much?
I think that storytelling is where I find the truth, where I no longer need to worry about anything other than what feels right.
Yeah.
And I have a different way of writing than most authors, in the sense that I show up, sit down, open up the computer, and I listen. And sometimes I don't hear anything, and then I'll get a muffin and a coffee and wander off. And I think that's what probably a lot of writers think of as writer's block. But I just feel that, okay, the stories, no one was there to talk to me. Yeah. But most often, I'll start to hear someone telling me something, and I start taking dictation and writing it down as quickly as I possibly can. Yeah. And so I'm endlessly surprised and excited by what's going to happen each day. And sometimes I show up at home and I'll tell my wife, I don't like where this is going. Like right now, one of my characters is lost, and I hate being lost. I was like, I don't like this. And she always tells me the same thing. Well, just keep listening and following. Because anytime I've tried to do the thing where you come up with ideas beforehand and try to force them into the story, the characters rebel. The whole thing comes to a complete stop.
They don't want to be a part of it.
So as long as I trust them and they tell me what's happening, then each day is just an exciting adventure. And for instance, when I finished The Gift of No Water, I'd been traveling with these two characters for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And suddenly I'm in the cafe and I realized the last words I typed were the end. And I had no idea. And suddenly I'm a grown man sobbing, just crying in a cafe with people looking over. But because I realized I can't follow them on their journey anymore. So you fall in love with these people, and then sometimes you have to leave them. But I wouldn't do anything else for a career. Writing is always going to be, as long as I can hold a pen or type, it's always going to be my job.
You could have like, what's it called when you have like an assistant writing for you?
Yeah, I can, but I
so
like...
still keep it going for a little while after your hands are gone. And
you know, one of my favorite authors was Robert Louis Stevenson, and he wrote one of his novels, I think it was Kidnapped, when he was terribly sick, and he had to be in the dark, and his niece would come in with a shielded candle, and she'd scrawl this down, and he would tell the story, and I thought, how is this possible? And then a few months ago, I had a terrible flu where I was flat with a fever, like could barely move, and I would stagger up at 2 a.m, and the only place I could escape was writing this ridiculous project. And after 4 days, when I was finished, I hardly recognized it. It's called A Comprehensive History of the Peoples and Cultures of Norway. And none of it is factually accurate at all. It's the workings of a madman. But I realized that you can indeed write your way out of misery, because you can disappear into another thing. So you could dictate if you wanted, but I like the feel of the words. I like the editing. I like every stage of storytelling.
But how is it? Because I think it's really interesting, that kind of listening in. But what I've come to see how is the tools gonna help you or limit you? Because I mean, in the way that you can do that, you already have some writing skills, Or if I'm trying to play a piano, I've played a piano for my whole life, but I quit early on. The piano lessons. So the only thing I can now is, with the one hand I can play every melody, but I don't know how to use both hands.
I see what you're saying. The innate skill, or the
so I can listen to the music is coming in, but it clogs up because it can't get out because the tools aren't working.
I see what you mean.
You don't have the proper tool.
I struggled with that for so long because I have severe dyslexia. And it's so severe that as a child, as a student, I didn't attend normal classes. They didn't know what to do back in the 70s and early 80s with a kid that couldn't spell or write legibly, or had any math skills. So I was in a small classroom for my entire school career with kids that had Down syndrome, fetal alcohol syndrome, and brain injuries, and this small pack of great characters. I love them, and that's why I ended up working with Tom and other special needs people. But at the time, it was just misery. You're just in this little classroom with what they called the retarded kids. So when I knew I would be a writer, I didn't know how. Computers weren't around yet. So that's when I would actually read into those old tape recorders and then actually pay people to write the stories. So the instrument wasn't there, and that what you're talking about was incredibly frustrating. And then suddenly the laptop computer came along, and I realized I can go to cafes, and this helps me with the spelling. And I'm still slow, but I think that slowness is also really helpful because it allows me to take my time with things and realize that this isn't about the bulk of words.
It's not churning out just words per minute. It's a process that takes.
And it's a bit like, I know bird hunters always say that you shoot better with a single shotgun than you do with one that can shoot, several in a row, like a pump action, because you have to take that one shot very specifically. So that's how it is with this. I could never do the novel or two a year that some writers do. I don't have that instrument. But I like the time that it takes for the handful of novels that I'll write.
Yeah. But it will give you the sort of perspective that those stories need, right?
I think so. I mean, it's
the faster writer will sort of connect with different types of stories.
Yes.
Or at least my understanding, and I like how Elizabeth Gilbert, I don't know if you've heard some lectures of her.
I don't believe so, no.
She wrote a book, Eat, Pray, Love, right, about her spiritual awakening.
Yes.
But what she's saying is that it seems that creativity is something you channel, or sort of like something you connect to. Like there's a highway of creativity, and you can tap into that by listening, like you're describing it.
That sounds about right.
But you can't force it. Like, now I'm going to be creative. That doesn't work that way at all.
I think it might be, I can't remember who said it. It might have been Rob Bell that talked about being working at God's pace.
Yeah.
And that pace within you that is the proper pace, the right. And if you force that, either too little or too much, it becomes quickly apparent You just start, things unravel. And so for me, it's that listening. Listening is always a part of tuning into God's pace. And when that happens properly, it all comes together. But I can always feel when I'm forcing it, and I just have to stop. It's I don't want to have to just delete something. And the same with the woodworking. If I show up in the wrong state of mind and I think I need to get this done for the Christmas market, I'm going to make 5 of these, so it won't be quality at all. So listening to that pace is, for any creative work, that's very important. And I like the sound of it.
I don't know. We watched a movie the other day, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which you
Oh my
watched,
God.
ages ago. And when you're talking about this, I'm sort of thinking about the movie because it's something about some movies that there is some forethought, and the flow you're talking about is sort of in the actual movie. And when you're watching it, it's sort of like a trust thing where you're sort of like, do you trust me? It's sort of like, I feel Kubrick is saying in the beginning of it, do you trust me? And then if you sort of, yes, I'm going to go with you on this. You have this fantastic journey where you're entering this world. But if you sort of say, no, this is too weird for me. I'm not right. This doesn't seem right, or it doesn't. You start putting all these tags and labels on it. Then you're just watching a huge black rock that's just standing in the middle of the room, not understanding.
Yes, you're stepping outside of the project and judging it.
Yeah.
You're outside of it. And I think any good movie or any good book gives you that sense that, oh, okay, I'm in. You just sit back in the seat, click your seatbelt in, grab your popcorn, and just, you're on that ride with them. And that's any form of storytelling. That's such a ungraspable but important aspect to it. And it's funny when something doesn't work, when a book or a film doesn't work, and you're like, I don't know why, but I can't trust this. I'm not on board. And the unknowable factor is probably also what makes being a creative really fun, because it could stop tomorrow. I could literally go into it, and that's the last story anyone tells me. And that preciousness of that, the fact that it's rare and it could go away any day, that also makes it so much fun.
That's really cool. That is super cool.
Yeah, but it's also with like that movie, for instance. When I was watching it, I was probably 10 years old or something, and
that's not a movie for a 10-year-old.
I don't know.
Somebody needs to be arrested. This is wrong.
I just remember I went to the library and I rented it or borrowed it from the library. I was watching the whole movie. It was super weird, but at some point, at some layer, it spoke to me, but I couldn't. And right now, I don't remember anything other than the block and the last scene of the movie. But what I remember is that it kind of hit me. Something hit me with the whole story, but I couldn't explain it at all. Like there is impossible in my mental understanding of things to put any kind of words to it. So the only thing I could say, did you like the movie or not? And I could say yes. But if someone would ask something more, I don't know.
I mean, great movies like that, it should never be asked, what did you think of it? It should always be asked, what did you feel? Because I walked away from that feeling a lot that I couldn't articulate. Whether you're 10 years old or 50, you're going to have that same experience. And so you probably took it in as purely as anybody else at that age, and walked away from it with as much understanding. It's just a movie you experience. Yeah. And I think I enjoy that so much when there's something that you walk away from and you feel it days later. You can feel it in your bones. And that's good art.
Yeah, that is art. But from my perspective, when I was a kid, I also recall watching movies and experiencing them. But then as I grew older, and I started to do went to and had film theory and started to get into the mechanics and and like the physical aspects of how does film work, how does the script work, and it became very theoretical and very much in the mind, I would be like analyzing the film. Everything I watched, I would be analyzing it and like, okay, so that's interesting, and then doing that, and then they're doing this, and then they end up here. Okay, interesting. But at one point, I sort of had to sit down and I was like, but I'm not experiencing anything.
Wow.
Because I'm just sitting there outside of the film. So I took a conscious decision of saying, I need to be with the film, because I guess from one perspective, the initial reason for being interested in the theory of film was because I wanted to make film, but at one point it just started giving me nothing, because if you're just watching the film from sort of like a very clinical perspective, it's just some frames of something. And when I did that, like a whole world opened itself up to me. Like, because any film will have like something that you can experience, but you have to like the suspension of reality. You just have to go with it. And the moment I did that, the movies became so much more like profound, interesting, and my emotions were available. I could feel what the film was trying to conjure in a way different, on a much higher level, but which I thought was quite fun. I struggle retelling movies I've seen, which I think is a very good indicator of how well you've experienced the film. Because if you're remembering everything that happened in the film, like, okay, you went into that door and then you said, stick up your hands, I'll shoot you in the head. But then you weren't in it.
I had a friend back in the States that if I made the mistake of saying, so how was that movie? They would start and somehow remember and tell me almost as if they were reading a script. And then the guy went there, and then she said, not me, and then that's my husband. And so you don't want that. You don't want that either. That's to be avoided. But I think there is something to be said about learning enough to, about any process, learning enough to ruin it, and then falling back in love with it again, because that new love is deeper. You can appreciate it, and then when they're on, it's amazing. And when they're not, you're still stimulated, because you can look at where a book went bad, where a film went bad, or even a painting.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good journey you've been on for the work that you do.
Yeah, it's like you construct, but then you also have to deconstruct afterwards to sort of put it all back together and actually get something out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Movies. Love the movies. Now, woodwork, on the other hand, I love painting walls, or like putting up a kitchen, or
fixing up your place.
Fixing up a place, or other people's places. Just like working with my hands, making things. I think it's got quite the allure to it.
And it's good for any work where you stare at a screen, or that you deal with words a lot or ideas. Woodworking is it's such a tactile, organic, real thing. You'll begin, and 2 hours later you can see what you've done. And for me, it's a necessary counterbalance to living in words for several hours. So I double them up. I'll go and write, and then I always come back and work with wood for a couple hours. And I have a dryer bank, which is hypnotic, a lathe. You lock the piece of wood in, and it spins, and then and there's something about the round, beautiful shapes, and I can see it in my sleep. Sometimes I'll doze off at night, and I'll just have this, and so there's something about that, and it's one of the earliest practices in woodworking. They used to make these contraptions with ropes they would attach, and they'd use a pedal and spin, and so the lathe has been around for just hundreds and hundreds of years. So I feel a connection to the woodworkers that came before, because we're not really doing much different. I mean, I have electricity on my side.
Yeah. So
but still,
a bit more ease, I guess. Yeah. But it's when we're talking about this, it's just and also about the whole film thing. This being present in the moment thing comes to mind, because that's sort of what I noticed also when I was starting to enjoy films more, was that if I was present in the film was way more than if I was trying to, for instance, predict how the movie ends, or looking back and trying to but if that happened, what's going to happen now? But if I just let these things go and just stayed present in the moment, then all of a sudden it felt much richer. It felt like totally different. And
it's the same with with sex or having a meal. If you're how many times do we wolf down a meal that's been, when you think about how far all these ingredients have come, the geniuses that have crafted what a lasagna would be, and then it's made beautifully and roast for a couple hours, and then you're just in a rush and you wolf it down and think, was I there for that meal? Yeah. So that's why it's very important to bring that idea as a mantra into so many other aspects of your life. Am I experiencing this? Am I here right now doing this? Yeah. Or is just a stepping stone to the next thing I need to do? And boy, the quality of life will change a lot depending on which angle you come at it.
Yeah.
It's true. I remember last year I had a weekend where I went away to a cabin and I didn't bring anything, like not even a book, like nothing.
Nice.
No, it wasn't nice.
Yeah, no. It's the best thing you ever
not
did.
Not in the beginning, but I remember I could do something, and I remember one moment I had a shower, and I enjoyed taking the shower, but then it come to my mind that, oh no, I don't know what to do after this.
That's amazing to me. Yeah, that's because we don't get a chance very often to get bored.
Yeah.
And just so many of the best things that happen, like when you're a kid, all the power is taken away from you. Really, you can't decide when and where and what and when you eat, but that leaves you bored quite often. And that's when you meet your best friends. That's when you discover that when you flip over a rock, there's bugs under it, and then you spend half an hour in that world wondering if you're that small. Getting a chance to be bored, what a gift. And we rob ourselves of that gift anytime that we overstimulate. The other night during halftime, what is this, football? During intermission of the movie we saw, I went down and there was a long line, maybe 30 people waiting for the bathroom. And there were 30 people that couldn't bear the agony of the 5-minute wait in line. So they were all watching movies and things. Right? And I thought, is your mind not full? Are you not entertained? You could just take a short mental breather, but no, they were locked, because heaven forbid that you are bored for even a moment. Yeah. And boredom is where a lot of good stuff comes from.
I think where all the good stuff comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Because like when you talk about the creative flow, if you were to be doing all types of stuff, not sitting down, listening, the book would never show up.
No, it'd be a different kind of book altogether.
Yeah.
I'd have to try to fill that frantic intensity. But no, it's nice to be, and I think that's with travel. Most of us remember travel with such fondness. And a lot of what I think we remember from a great journey is, it's not the museums or the wild parties or things that happen. It's going to be the fact that you had to sit on a train and stare out the window for 7 hours, and then you got stuck and couldn't get a ride in that one place. And though you remember it because you were stimulated in a completely different way.
Yeah, it's true.
Boredom.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
So for the next 10 minutes of the podcast, there will be no sound. Sit in this boredom and ponder it.
Thank God it looks like you're doing something, because you have your earplugs in and you're walking around looking real busy. Checking it. Something happened. It's quiet because you weren't listening. Because actually I was listening to a podcast this morning because Rob Bell had Pete Holmes as a guest.
So great. What a great combination, those two guys. Come on.
It's like divine.
Yeah.
But then, so I started listening, and then I started writing an email. And as I was writing the email, I was like, wait a minute, these are one of your two favorite people in the world. They're talking together. They actually recorded it for you.
For free.
For free. and you're starting to write an email. So I paused the podcast, and then I finished the email, put away the phone, or press play, because the phone is also the podcast listening device. Should have had like a cassette deck. We should send it out on cassettes. New podcast out.
Yes.
On
Take this in.
cassettes.
Take this to the mountains with nothing else.
And so I rewinded it, rewound. Well, went to start again and started the podcast all over, so I could be present in their conversation.
And it's all about being deliberate like that, setting things. I remember I was very young. I read Walden, and that was a book about, you remember, the man that went to a lake. Excuse me. He went off to a lake to spend a year doing what you did up in the cabin, just with nothing. Yeah. And he starts the whole book by saying, I went to the woods to live deliberately. And that's just haunting.
Yeah, right.
Because I want to live deliberately. I want to make decisions all the time, because those decisions will be a lot better than the habits that I've fallen into by following the herd. It's like living deliberately is, it's a goal. It's your life's work.
Yeah. That's what we're here for. To actually live it.
It's exactly what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. But we had like a
Team?
a theme. Did we have a theme?
There was
We
a
did.
sentence.
What was the sentence?
It was something that you and I talked about the first time we met. It was,
Owning
it's
what
called
you own.
Owning what you
Owning
own.
what you
Yes. And that happened to me. The decision to own what I own happened about 14 years ago. And Christina and I were getting ready to move into an apartment. We were going to combine her stuff, her apartment, and my little apartment, and move together. And
Was
we
it
realized
stuff of
that
two
it won't
people?
fit. Yeah, the stuff of two
Merged
people.
together.
And suddenly it came into my brain like a diamond dropped from the sky. What if I did something outrageous and decided that I'm only going to own what I think is beautiful or useful? How much of this stuff would I actually keep? So just as an experiment, I walked over to our knife, fork, and spoon drawer, and I pulled it out and took every single thing out of it, wiped it out, and then set it down and said, okay, what goes back in here that I really find beautiful or useful? And it was amazing in that one little drawer, the number of things that I'd been storing. And it came to me that, you know, we're all hoarders, but we just don't know it because everyone else around us is a hoarder. But in the Western world, we're so rich. We've got so much that we just naturally hoard. And I found, I found 3 super glues in the back of the thing, and I had just gone and bought another super glue, and one of them had dried out because it was so old. I found, 45 packets of those chopsticks that you always think, I'll use those again.
Yeah, when you buy takeout.
Surely
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
having nice food at home, I'm going to be using a takeout.
Of
So
course, of
you
course.
store those. I found, and so by the time Christina and I had put away the knives, forks, and spoons and a few nice things that we liked, we had this pile of stuff that either needed to go to free text or junk. And it struck me how much easier and better my life would be if I could do that with more and more sections of our life, because our lives are always stacked up in these sections of boxes and closets and cupboards. And it took us on a spiritual journey that, at times was devastating, because the important thing about it was that each item that we threw away, we had to look at and decide and think, why did I buy this? Where is it from? Do I want it? Am I keeping this out of guilt because Aunt Hilda gave it to me and now she's dead and how she, or is this something hidden that I should have out that I haven't looked at for 10 years because it's buried in junk? And so we developed a method, a bit like Pavlov's dogs. We would play Mozart because Mozart is good mind music. They play it for math students before it helps you to organize your brain the way that Mozart or Bach. So we would always play some classical music like that. Take whatever it is, whatever box, whatever closet's too big, whatever section you can find, We'd take it out and take everything out of it, clean it out, and then start one by one. And sometimes a little box can take you, 3 hours, and sometimes a whole closet takes you 20 minutes because you don't know which of your own skeletons or monsters you're going to find. Yeah. One time I was down in the boot, and I found a shoebox, and I realized it had been taped and wrapped. I realized that this had followed me from when I was 15. Oh, shit. And it was a shoebox that had my father's boots in it. And he had these amazing kangaroo skin, green adventure boots. And when I was a boy, he used to let me wear them when I got big enough to wear them. And then after he died, I kept those boots, and for one summer, I wore them the whole summer. But then I got bigger, and by the time I turned 15, I went the next summer to put them on, and my feet were too big, and I couldn't fit them. And my mom found me just raging and smashing things. I was so angry. So I put them away like a little coffin, wrapped them up, and they moved with me from house to house and boot to boot and cellar and attic. And I found this thing, and I was like, I can't. So I went outside, threw them away, went back inside, went back out, got them out of the trash, went back out again and threw them. And this went several times until my wife found me, this is maybe 6 or 8 months ago, just laying in a heap on the floor, just weeping. I couldn't face the weight of my father's shoes, and that I couldn't fit them, and it didn't work. It was so heavy. And so Christina looked into this American site. It's eBay. Started looking. We found that the company had shut down in the 70s, and suddenly she found a pair of boots in my size, green kangaroo skin leather, 1966, the exact boots, unworn, still in the box. And I said, I don't care if they cost $100,000. Order those now. She said, well, we can bid on them. I'm like, no. And I waited for a week, and then these boots showed up, and they were mine, and they fit me, but they were still my father's. That was the journey that owning what you own can take you on.
It's an intense journey.
It's crushing. But now whenever, the other night there was a Alt for Norge party for season 9, and that's a special event. So I put on my father's boots and I go there. So there are rewards, but there be monsters. There are monsters in your closet, people.
Yeah.
And
for real.
It's important work. The offshoot of it is that every time I go into a drawer or a closet or a space, because now it's been years of doing this, I only have what I like. Every T-shirt is a shirt I actually like. Every sock, every screwdriver,
flip through all these things that you don't really
so much time. Yeah. It saves you so much, and then the things that you do like, you're more of yourself because what's on display in your life is really yours. People can walk in and look around and say, "Yeah, this is genuinely him," and not guilt-ridden stuff that just happened to wash up on the shore and be kept. So that process of owning what you own, it's improved so many aspects of my life, but it's not for the faint of heart. You need to square your shoulders and go in hard when you go in.
A book about it.
I think I might.
I'm going through that process right now in the sense because I just moved with my girlfriend. So we are combining our stuff.
Merging the stuff.
You know this process well then.
Yeah, I started to look at it. But I also have things piling up from my history because I moved around and I had a company, I had an office. So I actually spent the last year really going through a lot of stuff, but there is still so much stuff.
It feels like it's looking into the sun. That's why compartmentalizing is so good. I mean, I've had people that say, oh, I can't even imagine having time to do all of that. And then a few minutes later, they'll tell me how season 7 of Sopranos is their best season. And I think, no, you've got all the time in the world. But you just take it bit by bit, box by box. But when you do it, you have to do it with some real purpose. You can't really pick at it. You have to really pull it out, play some music, take it all out, to try to organize within a structure or a container is hopeless. You need to dump it all out and spread it. Yeah. And that's when you stumble into the things that you didn't remember. Like, oh, I wanted to take up sewing, and I've got this sewing machine in the back of this thing, and you have to confront your decisions when you own what you own.
Yeah.
But the rewards, they're so helpful. They'll make you better at whatever it is you're doing, just because you won't waste time stumbling over all the roadblocks that you've built ahead of yourself with this guilt-ridden junk.
Also, I remember having this realization that you're actually, so it's stored out here in the physical world, right? So you have this
Yes.
these pair of shoes,
Yes,
but they take up a lot of space in your mind,
they do.
and they're weighing you down. Because that's what I've come to realize, that what's even more like especially these things that have you got from someone, or they have some sort of like
Guilt.
value on a personal level. In addition to probably this, it also has monetary value. So you're sort of like, oh, this is worth a lot, or I bought this and I never used it. So
The word worth becomes, in your mind, it takes up a space.
takes up a space. So the thing itself. So I think we talked about it once. So I have when I started a company years ago, I had to borrow money from my mother to buy a Mac so that I could edit. So it cost like 30 grand. And it was like the most money I've ever spent on something when I didn't have any money. And it was sort of important, right? So in the basement, there is a Mac from 2001
Yeah.
or 2002.
The Guilt Mac 2000.
Guilt Mac 2000.
Yeah.
It's the thought of throwing it away is like so scary to me, because I spent money I didn't have even to get this thing, and it was so important, and it has so much like value and history. But then at the same time, how much value? What is the actual value to me? Because what I'm thinking now that you're talking about the whole taking the actual time to reflect upon what is this item and what does it mean for you, is that I don't want to go there, right? Because it's that company, for instance, we had like a breakup, a bad breakup.
So that's attached to this.
Oh yeah,
Plastic, clump as well.
Because I started up in Trondheim. We started up in 2001, post 9/11, and it's a hard time to get people to buy things they didn't need, like advertising or films for their company or whatever. So it was like not easy to start up. But we started up, and we started like building the company, but it was hard, and we didn't make any money. So when I got a job offer in Oslo in television, I took it because it was like I was broke, and it was really exciting to actually work in the television industry. So I was like, I'm just going to stay for a couple of months. And they were sort of like, but we have this thing here and you're going there. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to stay for a couple of months. I'm coming back. And then and another job showed up, and I was like, this is interesting, and feeding my ego, because you're good and you're young and you're like in Oslo, because Trondheim is a small town compared to Oslo. So for me, it was really like the big city. And then the boys were like, well, when are you coming back? Like my friends in the business. And like, well, it's just going to be a little bit longer, but that's okay. And I slowly sort of realized myself that I'm not coming back. But so we had a meeting where I was trying to tell them that I'm not coming back. But, as a Norwegian, we don't do well in conflicts. So it's going to be very understated. So I was like, well, I want to work longer in Oslo, but I still want to be part of the company. And they were like, but you're not a part of the company if you move to Oslo. And I was like, well, yeah. And then we sort of split up. And it was like breaking up with a girlfriend, actually, because it was friends of mine. So it was like intense. But so the Mac stayed with them. But I was like, but the Mac's mine. And they were like, yeah, you'll have your Mac. But they used the Mac. So it was sort of like it became sort of like this item of
Contention in a way.
And you're gonna get it back real soon. Just
But
you haven't figured out a way to give
In
it
that
to you.
family, the Mac was the child that you guys were having
Yeah, it was
custody battles
it was the
over.
custody battle. So when I finally got it back, it was like my Mac is I paid for this, and I lost the company, but I have the Mac still.
Yeah, these things that we own have so much. They have ghosts. There's so much attached.
Yeah.
God damn it! I think
Yeah.
I'm ready to throw out
It's
the
like
Mac
I think
now.
that it's time for that Mac to. I think we should go out and
Yeah.
and have a ritual where we send that Mac off into the world. But the other interesting thing about it is, as much as you struggle, the minute that you make that decision
Yeah.
and it goes away, you've got space where it was, but you don't have the guilt where it was. That thing doesn't hold sway over you
Because literally,
anymore.
a weight has been lifted off my shoulders because I now took the time to actually go through the entire history of the Mac to see what was
Yes.
there and what does it really represent.
And that's different than if, your mom had suddenly said, "Oh, I threw out that old Mac." You'd be like, but that was... But because you need to go through the process.
It's a conscious decision you have to make.
My
Yeah,
mother
because
was,
if your mother throws it away, that's just going to leave the biggest what-if hole.
You never get a chance to do that
Yeah.
process. That's why it's never good to have others deal with your stuff, if at all possible, because you have to do the process. And my
Yeah,
mother
because
was
I
a real estate agent, and she said that she would help people do this to their house before selling it. She'd say, we need to move half of what you have into storage, rearrange it like this. You need to clean it out really well, and then we'll have a showing. And invariably, people watching others go through their clean, minimalist house would say, I kind of don't want to move now. I miss this. This place is nice. This is the first time they'd looked at their own house for years because they'd been filling it with this junk.
Yeah.
So one of the things you're buying when you think of worth is space. In Oslo, you will pay a lot of money per square meter, which means if you can manage to get rid of a few square meters of junk, you've got a bigger apartment.
That's true.
And it really works that way. Even just taking your TV from a stand up
Hanging
against
it
the wall
on
and
the
getting
wall,
rid of the
yeah,
stand, and you've got another square meter.
But it's also because I mentioned, I spent the last year and plus throwing things away, but never regretted anything that I let go of. Never.
No, you don't look back and go, that one thing.
It's gone.
Yes, when it's gone, it is gone. And also somebody else might need it. That's the nice thing.
Slay Rosebud.
Yeah,
He does seem to regret that quite a bit. We're
Rosebud
missing something here.
might be
Is it his childhood, maybe, perhaps?
That was one of the great movies of all time, and it was based on this thing that
No, I
had
have
this
to rewatch
important...
this film.
Let's
Because when
watch
I
it
watched
together.
the last time, I was in my analytic mind. So why is this movie the best movie in the world? I think. Oh yes, it's because they do like flashbacks and Oh yeah, very clever.
Now we'll watch it and just hold hands and cry. Because
We're gonna
we'll
cry a
watch
whole
it
lot.
with pure emotion and nothing else.
But when you talked about that whole story about the Mac, I was like seeing it visually in my mind how it is like, okay, we have this thing. It doesn't take up a lot of space, in physical space. The Mac
It's not that
not
big a
that
Mac.
big, But in the mind, once you approach it and you just open the door a little bit, there comes this, this huge story about this important thing.
Yeah, this closet
And
is very full. So when you're
it's
opening,
actually-
it's like flooding out. of it.
Yeah.
Like,
If you don't realize it, actually that story, it never even stops. It can go on and on and on.
oh yeah, that
Yeah.
story could be longer.
Because you can always take a layer down, layer down.
So
into it.
imagine how much space you open up in your soul for the work that you want to do that's on hand now, with every emotionally charged item that you manage to either decide to keep or decide to get rid of.
Yeah.
You're opening up space to work, to grow, to
Soul
listen
space.
and move. You're opening up soul space. And you know how much soul space costs per meter?
That's some expensive stuff.
In Oslo? Ridiculous.
And I guess, so in one perspective, you always wanted to write that book. When you come into the room where you're going to write the book, it's full of junk. So what your mind is filled with is all the junk that is in the room.
Yes.
And the room is filled with the junk, so you can't even sit down to
You
actually
can't
write
maneuver.
the book. So
Yeah.
you need to clear out both the physical space and the mental space. And I think you're onto something, that your mental space, even though the Mac is fairly small, your mental load might be
Yeah.
quite
Can
vast,
be,
and
yeah.
it could be like a lot of square meters of your mind is like filled up with things that you need to reflect upon and actually let go of.
And they get in the way of the very real things that you'd like to do each day. You know, how many times, I mean, when they talk about, middle-aged men always talking about being so forgetful, but my theory is this: they're not forgetful, they're just drowning in their own.
Yeah.
You know, after 50, 60 years, you've gained so much that they wander around the house bumbling, going, where did I leave the ballpoint? Where did I had the locks for the outdoor, where's the locks? And then it's got to be so annoying for wives to just listen to the man wander around the house going, honey, where did I put damn it, I had that thing. It fills a bulk of their day. And that's why they'll get so angry when one task takes forever, because they have to get this and then it doesn't fit with that. When you do the work, and it takes years, but when you've really brought your every room down to its essence, you maneuver like a Jedi.
Yeah.
Like you move through. The other day there was a broken lock.
Clarity.
A broken lock on the boot, and because I'd done this ages of work to get all my tools and things in order, it was possible to walk downstairs, grab the drill, grab the thing, and I think maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but 10 years ago, that job would have been me digging through the boot
Yeah,
for
it'd be
every
half a
tool.
day just.
For everything. That's a whole, many-hour session, and then I'm lucky if I find the right things for it. And now life is just easier, and because I'll take the path of least resistance. I'm generally lazy about things. Then it feels good to move swiftly through my life, to do these tasks without, overworking it.
Yeah. But moving swiftly through your soul space.
Yes, it's the
crucial
two move in tandem. They really do.
They have a lot of stuff. You're like when you watch the show Hoarders, right? And they're coming into the house,
yeah.
and there's sort of like a path, and you have to move really like carefully not to tip all that stuff over. But that's your mind.
We're all emotional hoarders. We really are, and it's a harder show to make, but just as fascinating.
Yeah.
Emotional hoarders. It's the idea that there's a lot of stuff we can actually literally let go of, because we just feel like we need to be camels and we store these things up, and then we drag them along. So first you deal with the actual space, and then your mind will definitely follow you there.
Yeah. Or I guess now I'm sort of getting, if I'm trying to like visualize your vessel, this human body of yours. So the soul needs to have space, right, to sort of grow and to blossom. But if you just fill up your mind, which is one of the soul's many tools, if you fill it up enough, it's sort of cramping up soul's space.
Yes.
So soul is like, damn mind, you're taking over here. You shouldn't be putting all this stuff in here, and you need to clean out your closet.
I think it's the idea. Yeah, this idea that we're stumbling over ourselves, that we're putting stuff in front of our own path, and then wondering why we can't move easily. And with each thing, this idea of what you've attached to it can be crippling. I mean, think about. The other night I watched Pulp Fiction, and that watch that was in different prisoners' asses before it finally made his way in. He almost died, that character, but it's a good symbol of what we'll do in real life. We'll put ourselves in grave peril in order to protect, useless things because we found a way to attach. So I've always been very clear to everyone that, do not attach me to any gift or thing. If I give you a gift, if the next day you decide that it doesn't fit on your wall or that's not a thing, should be zero guilt attached to anything you own. Because guilt is, of course, just such a heaviness. Guilt just distorts everything about what you'll own. And a lot of times it'll be something silly like, oh, those were, those are his socks. Oh, and it's like, do you think this person that you miss bought those socks and then thought, this is me? Remember me through this great gift? No, it's wool formed in a half tube. Throw it out. And then the very few things that we keep from our from people that are important. They should be held high in our house. They should be
Yeah,
polished
something
and
you
well
love
kept and on
yeah.
display.
Yeah.
And often those are the things that make you feel guilty when you find down in your boot, oh, this picture of, you know, my great grandparents, or here's a film from the 1940s that my family, we had. This stuff is treasure. That shouldn't be in a plastic bag hanging with, you know, the old paint cans. So it's all about priorities as well. And yeah.
Yeah. It was just like the whole hoarding thing. Is it because like both in the mind and in our houses, we're packing up with stuff as if we're preparing for something, or as if we are postponing something. And I don't remember who said it, but I thought it was kind of cool, was that you can rationalize that if you have a lot of stuff that you haven't used and that it's sort of ready to be used, you can't die because you still have stuff. There's still stuff here. You can't go yet. There's still toothpaste. And I thought, like, but it's like, what are we, like, if you're going out on a journey into the unknown, which is sort of what we're doing every day, even though we're pretending we're not, because we're trying to just do the same thing over and over again, so we don't have to go to an unknown place. But the problem with the unknown is you don't know what it is. So you better pack up all your Mac stories and your shoe stories and everything, and just keep it in there, because it might come in handy.
Yeah, you want to go tool heavy, and then you don't realize every new situation I'm in now, I'm burdened by all
So
I can barely move.
You haven't
this
started
new
the journey yet,
space.
and you're like crawling like with tons of dead weights in your backpack. And if the story Askeladden, you know, the guy with his brothers, and he goes out on a quest, and he finds stuff along the way. It's so obvious, right?
Yes.
You're not bringing stuff from the village. You're going on a quest.
Right, but if he had all these things with him, he wouldn't have realized.
Yeah, I'd be like, I don't need an old shoe. I got tons of shoes in my back here. No worries.
I traveled a lot when I was younger, and I would travel with as little as possible, because I found that everything that you bring into a new place is a bit of a wall, including money, is a barrier between you and the new people you're going to meet. And so my rule was 25 pounds in the backpack, and it took me forever. I was cutting toothbrushes in half and tearing pages out of travel books, and until I boiled it down to what I wore and 25 pounds in a backpack. And that's what I left for Europe when I was maybe 21, 22, and spent 6 months with almost no money, wandering into new situations, carrying almost nothing. And it was so great to meet people that vulnerable, because they respond immediately. They want, and also you're giving them the gift of helping a stranger. And sometimes if you're poor, or you're struggling, or you don't feel like if you have a low self-esteem, to be able to help somebody else that really needs your help is such a injection.
Win-win.
Yes,
Everybody wins.
so I wandered for 6 months around Europe, and then 9 months around Australia and New Zealand, just penniless, carrying 25 pounds or less in a little backpack, and it's such a great way to greet an adventure.
Yeah. And you have the space and the agility to actually experience it.
Well, you have no choice.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it. You've bought the ticket, you've got $40, and you've got a little backpack. No matter what happens from here, it's all going to be exciting and memorable. But if you've got, $2,000 and your train ticket set, you know what hotels you're going to stay in, I can almost plot your adventure for you, because it will be, all of that money and that protection, and that's just a barrier between you and any local you're ever going to meet.
Yeah. Plus, I don't think you can call it an adventure anymore.
I think you can kind of
Not really, no.
you can kind of boil it down to if you have a lot of things, you always have the option, to use them. So if you boil it down to something, the concrete question is that if you don't have anything, the only question is yes or no to life, to the flow, to everything,
Good point.
But if you have a lot of
yes.
things, the only question you have is which tool should I use?
Yes.
The tool.
Which of my thing am I going to do exactly what I've always done with that thing of mine,
exactly.
as opposed
so
to...
you miss the whole thing.
Oh, no, that's an excellent point. And And that stands for big adventures like going off with a backpack, or just even the little adventures like, what do you have with you when you leave the house?
Yeah.
Do you ever just walk out naked and afraid with just, T-shirt and jeans and your shoes and walk out into the world? It's like, no, I might not be stimulated. I might not be entertained without my music, but you also might stumble into something you hadn't seen that's in your own neighborhood, simply because you walked out there without the tools you normally carry.
Yeah, true.
So they do own you. You know the things. If you don't actually reflect upon what they are,
absolutely.
they will end up owning you.
If you're not deliberate,
Yeah.
if you don't own them, if you don't make that decision to own them, as you say, then they will own you. If you're not deliberate about it, you're being carried around by your stuff. It chooses your path. It chooses who you hang out with.
Yeah, it does sound heavy.
Well, it's it's the burden of being an entire civilization of hoarders now. I mean, we all live like the Egyptian pharaohs did when they just stacked it up. It's just that now we're so aware of it, we're not aware of it because we all do it. So unless somebody's got it chronically,
Yeah,
like,
then we can say
like in
that's
the
a hoarder.
hoarders, but otherwise,
We're all hoarders.
no, absolutely. I can say with complete confidence that you own 60% more than you need to. I
Yeah.
can say that absolutely comfortably, that if we went through and spread everything you owned into Bislett Stadium and then you went one by one and said, I like this, I want this, there would be a small amount. And that's empowering, that's exciting, because it means that all the treasures you need to shop for are in your own house. It's like a shopping trip. I didn't know I had Grandpa's pocket knife. I haven't seen this since I was 12. What's that? How cool. I'm going to sharpen it, oil it, and take it on the next camping trip with me. You go shopping in your own house, and meanwhile, other people benefit from what you own that you no longer need that goes to the free techs.
Yeah.
And then the offset is you also have more space and agility within your life.
So I have to say one thing which I found when I was throwing stuff away was that there is also a great power in actually throwing it away. Like
The
demolishing
physical
it.
act
Like,
of,
like-
yeah.
this must go. Because some things I realize that I'm hiding myself behind the fact that this is useful. Someone has to get this, and then it will live on forever. Whereas if I smash it to pieces, it's over.
Well, I
think it's for different things, and that's back to what you're saying about actually reflecting on what is this. If it's a tumor, don't hand it over to someone else. You should destroy it.
You are right. There, like if you read a book and you hate it and it's a horrible book,
That's not a book.
there's nothing sacred about it. Murder it in the bathtub and then take it outside.
It's like, this
And
was
never-
a shitty book. I'll give it to free text.
What?
You're an evil person.
So you're right. There's some things, and also there's some things that maybe it's important for you to have the ceremony. Like that computer should probably be a bit of a ceremony.
I think I'm
of
going to
taking
burn it like
out
Vader
and,
or something, like, because it's...
Drop it off,
Devotion.
send it up in a rocket. But there should be a ceremony, because then when you walk back away from that, there's no turning back. You can't rescue that. That's
Could
done.
I put fireworks? It's the G4 where you open them like a bread box on the side. Fireworks inside.
You had me at fireworks. I'm already in. Which, yeah, you did.
We're going to firework it.
I think
Because
it
I do
needs-
remember people putting fireworks into like mailboxes. Seem to be very effective.
So that way, when it happens, you've got the catharsis, the destruction of a thing that's been tormenting you for a long time.
You need to slay the dragon, man.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking to myself.
But now that it's been said, it's already in motion.
It is. I don't think that is a good thing.
Yeah.
And
And
with-
free.
I'm inspired to go home and clean.
Yeah, that's great.
Fireworks?
Maybe.
Cleaning with fireworks.
Well, and you can call me anytime. I'm going to give you my phone number. You can just call me and go, I'm stuck. It's like staring into this. I can't do this. And then I will talk you through it, because now it's been long enough that I would be very proud of you if you use this opportunity to put some of that in motion.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you bog down and you think, I can't even, just
You might need a
You call me.
sponsor.
I'll call you.
Exactly. Hoarders need sponsors.
But not because I thought I'd sort of hacked it, because I had my friend David coming along, and he was like, "You don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that," and then I threw it away.
Oh no!
But that's cheating.
That's someone else owning what you own and making
not,
life decisions.
Yeah.
But where someone can come in as a sponsor. That when I was in Seattle at a community college, I had this dorm room, and there was a German girl in the dorm room next door, and maybe once every 2 weeks she'd come and knock on the door. The story isn't going where I'm sure you're hoping it's going.
I'm not sure.
And I would walk over, and the music would go boom, chiki, bow. No, I'd walk in, and my job was to sit with a cup of coffee on her bed. And the reason I had to do that is because she would not clean and deal with things unless she knew she had to. So she'd say, "Could you please come and just refuse to leave?" And so I'd sit on the bed, and then it would just keep her in motion. She had to do it all, but she needed to know that she had to. And a sponsor can be someone who just comes along, hangs out, drinks your beer, and says, "Good job, buddy. Keep at it. Don't let it drag you down."
Not going to do the job
puts on
for
the
you.
Mozart. No, they can't. That's wrong.
Because
that's invasive.
robbing you from yeah.
Certainly help you carry things, but not make a single decision about a single thing you own.
Need to make the decision.
Yeah. But a sponsor's a good idea, because it is a big thing to even think of starting. But the minute that you clean one thing, one box, you'll be surprised how quickly, within an hour or two, you'll suddenly go, "Hey, where was that? Where was the lighter? I need to get a candle." Oh, and you'll open this perfectly clean drawer, and there's 3 workable lighters because you threw the 7 that don't work away. And you're so proud just to pick that up and light it. You feel smug already. You're swaggering as you use that one thing in the one clean section.
I think
That's a good
you should write a book about that.
It might be a worthy project.
No, how many books have you written?
I have The Gift of No Water was the first novel, and that's about an Anasazi medicine man and a boy that take a walkabout across the desert. So it's magical realism. And the second book, Copper Man, which just came out last year, and that's about Otzi, the Iceman. It's the man they found in the glacier that's 5,000 years old. It's his life story told in first person from birth to death. So I'm done with book 1, and that's out. That's for sale on Amazon.com as well. And then book 2 I'm in the middle of. And here in Norway, there's a company called Storytel, and that's where you can listen to audiobooks. And I read Copperman, book 1, onto an audiobook that's on Storytel.
So I can actually listen to you reading your book.
Yeah, it's nice when the author reads their own. I've always enjoyed listening to audiobooks because that's their story anyway. Yeah. So and it was fun to read it, because then after that long, it feels like, this is back to the old ways where people listen. I like audiobooks. People listen to someone sitting around a fire telling them a story.
Yeah, like we're doing right now.
Yes.
We've come full circle.
We've come full circle. You took the ends and you tied them together masterfully.
Neatly.
Very well crafted, my friend.
We got some Mac fireworks parades.
I can't wait. I really want to see this. Can I please be present for that event? However you decide to destroy. I think we really need to.
Yeah.
I'll bring drums. We'll make a thing of it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Do we have a question at the end? Yeah. Because it seems like we've come to the
natural spiral. Yeah.
And how much stuff can you actually hoard? Is there limits to this?
Spiritually, no.
Because it's infinite, right?
It's infinite. Yeah, that you create the space, but of course you're going to have to take all of that out of that space again. So as much as you decide to hoard, as much spiritual materialism as you wallow in, you're going to have to deal with each and every item.
Just postponing it. God damn it.